It's my pleasure to introduce Roberto and Jose Luis Rodriguez. Yes, they are brothers.
Can you guys hear us? Yep. All right, so, well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming today for our presentation. We'll be talking about an exciting project and how that's helping us a lot to also contribute back to the attack data sources in the car analytics as well. And my name, once again, Roberto. You guys might know me by Cyberwar Dog.
My name is Jose. I go by Cyber Panda.
And as you can tell, we're from Peru, and we're also brothers, so that's our name. All right. And we are the authors and contributors of a lot of the projects that you see over there. And actually, we created a open GitHub organization to put everything in there and start building a community. And today, we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot of material for 30 minutes, all the way from exploring attack data sources or attack itself from 2018 to today, all the way to start using Mordor, a project that we are so happy to talk about, to start contributing back to a couple of other projects for MITRE ATT&CK as well. Yep.
Okay, so we would like to start our talk just giving to you guys an idea of how can you query all the information you have in attack. And the way we like to do this is using the public taxi server that attack has, where all the information from attack is available over there in STIX format. So in order to query this data, Roberto created a Python library, ATT&CK, which works on top of the two libraries that MITRE created. And if you want to install it, you can do it via pip or direct from source. And also, if you want to learn more from this library, you can just go to the link that is below. We have a lot of resources there that will help you to start understanding the library and using it to query the information that is over there. So these are some of the functions that you can find in the library. If you want more information about each function, you can go to the link that is below. So for today, we are just using a couple of them in a short video, so you can understand how can you use it via Jupyter Notebooks. So let's start with our first demo, which is a short video about.
Yep, that starts.
Okay. So basically, what we need to do is, of course, import our library and also initialize our Python class that will allow us to start working with some functions, like for example, get techniques that will give us all the techniques in attack. So we have 535 techniques. Now, before we continue, we need to remove all the deprecated techniques. So we have 519 techniques, and then at the end, you can start working with a Python list where you can start exploring more about attack. Now, something else that you can do with this library is, you can just follow the same steps, import the libraries, and you can start working with this information. And this is actually the first time that we are translating the MITRE ATT&CK framework to Spanish.
So there it is. So we're starting translating everything. Yep. So you can see some similarities in there with the words and all that. So that's pretty cool. Just to run the Python library and then see some stuff that we never thought that it was translated that way. So that's pretty cool.
Yep. So now, using this library, what we can do is start exploring the new or the last updates, right? That the attack team released a couple of weeks ago.
A couple of days ago.
So of course we know that we have 519 techniques. Some of them have data sources, others not. Actually, 49% of the techniques do not have data sources. Now, if we split this information by matrix, right, we can see that in the enterprise matrix, we only have one technique without data sources. And this is cool because last year, the same slide, we had 4 techniques. So that means that people is contributing to attack, but we have one more.
Yeah, so there is one that you can just go back this weekend and then start working on that one if you want to contribute back. So
yep.
Right there, that's the one you need.
Now, from a data source perspective, file monitoring, process monitoring, and process command line still are the data sources that cover most of the enterprise framework. Now, with all these new numbers, right, we went back to the ATT&CKcon 2018, where we presented a methodology to map attack data sources all the way to event logs, modeling our data and also documenting our events. We started finding relationships between attack data sources and event logs, and we started calling these relationships sub-data sources. Now, this allowed us to start building a document, which is a Google Doc, right, actually?
Yeah, it's a Google Docs, public Google Doc, yep.
Yeah, so we start documenting and modeling every single event log that we collected in our environment. So if you want to get this file and also learn more about it, you can go to the link below. You just go to the OSINT option, then attack data sources, and just click on the last option you have on the website. Now,
yeah, there is a lot more to do in there, which is something that we started noticing, where now we wanted to also know what is actually triggering all these events, right? What are the things that we can do to start kind of like mapping things to an event? So not just an event back to a data source, but actually back to a potential API, for example. So from a security perspective, we started doing this cool graphs where we can have some events mapped to specific APIs. That's pretty cool, because that's allowing us to now start thinking about data sources that we are probably collecting after a simulation, for example, or how we can plan a potential simulation as well. This, of course, project started the API to event project as well. It's part of the Hunter's Forge project as well. And here we can, for example, this does not cover everything, but at least some APIs map to the Sysmon events IDs as well. So some of them would actually trigger these events. And it was very helpful to start also mapping a couple of other techniques that we were simulating.
So since last year, when we were started documenting and analyzing all the data from attack, we found a few opportunities to contribute back to the attack team, all the way since data sources that are covered by other data sources to the validation of the event IDs that are recommended for every attack data source. So what do we mean with data sources covered by other data sources and event logs that are too broad? So let's take this example where you can see credentialing registry technique. You can see the Windows registry data source is mapped to all those events on the right. Something very interesting here is that there are some events that are from Windows security events logs. So what we did was, okay, so let's go to our data sources graph. And actually, one of the data sources has the name Windows event logs. So there might be a correlation there between data sources. And this is really interesting because for Windows event logs, we have at least 400 events. So that's a lot of information that we have there. So what we did was start just trying to segment our events using the audit categories and subcategories of the event logs. So for example, let's focus on the audit registry piece of this data. And if you remember the slide where we have all the map from Windows registry to event logs, we only had 2 of them, but there are more, and we can start getting more context from these events. They are not only related to the Windows event logs data source. We can start mapping those Windows event logs to different data sources, like Windows registry, file monitoring, based on the relationships between elements in our data model. We are currently collaborating with the attack team. We already have a couple of meetings with Blake and Jamie. So we hope that after this presentation, we can start contributing with the attack team too. And something about the platforms is there are some data sources, Windows data sources, that are mapped to platforms that are not Windows. So we need to be careful with that. And this could be fits just if we start talking about sub-techniques.
Yep, so just until there, just be careful when you start mapping things back to specific data sources, keep those things in mind, right? How actually some data sources are mapped to other techniques and other platforms as well. So getting into the validation piece, we also found some opportunities in here. How can we start recommending data sources, right? We always say, if we need Windows registry, let's collect all this. Well, reality is that not everybody can collect everything, and some people might have low bandwidth for collection of data, so you have to be very specific. So we can take all this, for example, and then before we even go further, I always ask myself, okay, how does this fit everything that we just talked about in our potential kind of program or things that we're working on? So this could be a basic example in how you do research or develop analytics. Everything that we talked about so far just falls into the modeling of data, documentation, identifying relationships, and trying to understand what it is that you need to collect. Now, next question. So what do we do then to validate all these recommended data sources? Well, that's right in the next step. Why can't we just start doing some simulations so we can start mapping a couple of things that get generated after a technique back to our data sources? And when we talk about simulation, we go beyond just testing your A/B triggering something or your EDR triggering something. We're talking about learning about the adversary, trying to map data sources to specific actions, all the way to even validate the complemented, I would say like the analytics that you built on the top of what you already paid for or you're getting automatically. So this might be familiar for some of you, just basic stuff, trying to plan your specific simulation, execute it, try to see if it triggered anything, and then go in the loop all the way until you feel comfortable documenting what it is that happened. If we apply this on credentials in registry, for example, MITRE-ATT&CK already provides a lot of information that you can start using to start getting prepared for this, right? But there is a lot of things that you need to do besides that, right? There is actually some audit policies that you need to enable. Make sure that you have some settings enabled as well. And of course, if you're talking about Windows registry, especially in security event logs, you cannot just enable and expect every single registry just to trigger. You have to create audit rules for each specific thing that you're interested. Similar concept as Sysmon. When you create your config, you map it to specific entries. Now, what it is that we're looking for, credentials in registry, it's a little too broad. So let's just focus a little bit into, for example, the default automatic logons, for example, that you can use these 3 commands, and that would enable a user with specific creds to automatically log on in your system. How do you set an audit rule for this? There is a project that we also put together. It's a PowerShell module. You just import that, and then you use a set audit rule function to set up a monitoring rule. For example, somebody querying that specific registry. Testing commands, right? This was straight from the MITRE-ATT&CK framework. But then you have people telling you, hey, can you cover some more of that? Because that doesn't cover our numbers. We need to have at least 3. And so let's just throw some PowerShell in there, right? How can you do this with PowerShell? And then if you feel that you're being advanced and you say, let's do C# and Python, you will be surprised that that doesn't change the behavior. But, just mark it as a very advanced variation because you're using C# or Python. So are we actually ready? Well, not yet, right? Because you need to start executing this in an environment that is actually standardized and documented. If you do it in your own computer, it's not going to help anybody from a replication perspective. At the end of the day, you start doing something like this, right? Where you generate some data, you're ready to start validating analytics, and you start also learning about these techniques. And once the variations kick in, then you start getting a little freaking out. There's a lot of things going on in here. But the reality is that when a process queries a registry key value, there are specific events that are going to show up. And it doesn't matter if it's PowerShell, it doesn't matter if it's Python, it doesn't matter if it's just plain reg key or CMD commands in there. It's going to pretty much generate a lot of the data sources that MITRE-ATT&CK actually recommends for you to collect, which is process monitoring, handle requests, handles being closed, access to a registry key value. And at the end of the day, we can go from here all the way to here. So at the end, we're going to start validating what it is that actually this technique is recommending for us. Once again, MITRE-ATT&CK does a great job telling you need Windows registry, right? Because you actually do need that to validate some of this. But it's also something that you could do on the top of that to start validating what it is that you need from a Windows registry monitoring. Okay, so we started finding some opportunities in here as well, where there's a lot of things that we needed to do, as you can tell, a couple of slides just to set up my environment. And at the end of the day, we're generating similar data. Well, there's a lot of people doing this in the world, a lot of teams doing this. Everybody just doing the same thing. Probably are going to take these slides and do it tomorrow. And there's a lot of things that are happening, but we keep generating the same data, right? So what if we can share our data sets? What if we can just grab it, pretty much what I just did today, and just share it with anybody else? right? At the end of the day, we can take a lot of even teams that do not have people that are doing these simulation assessments, that have the expertise, but that they are ready to jump into data analysis or data validation, and they want to do some validation with attack data sources, for example. We can start doing something like that. And here is where the project modeler comes into place, where it's a repository of pre-recorded data sets in JSON format, categorized in the minor attack way, and that you can use. And everything comes with a lot of documentation, because I believe that this is key. I want you to know why certain events trigger. I don't just want to give you a document and say, good luck, this one maps to bypass ULUG. I'm awesome. No. There's actually a lot going on in here that you need to understand in order to know why certain telemetry trigger. We have certain environments, and if you haven't noticed yet, we loved a lot of the rings. And the Shire is just a basic Windows environment. You have your Windows computers, your domain controller, your C2 box, and all that. And at the end of the day, we have some telemetry enabled, and everything is documented. Specific sysmon config, specific audit policies. We take all this data, use WEF, send it to a Windows event collector, collect the data with WinLog beats, send it back to health, and then we can just start collecting that data also offline. We have another environment called Etterboard, and this environment is similar to the Shire, but it uses other telemetry, such as SilkTW. Thank you, Ruben from FireEye. Awesome, awesome project where you can actually tell your endpoint or SilkTW what ETW providers to enable. They enable those providers. Some event trace sessions get created. They subscribe to those ETW providers. SilkTW collects the data in real time and writes it back to an event log in real time. And you're pretty much collecting data from ETW providers where the channel, specific channel for event log is pretty much not set up. So it was not meant to practically just send events to the event log. We apply the same concept in here. And you might be asking yourself, how do we collect the data? Well, we use Kafka as a tool to import, to extract data, and also to send data back to a server. If you want to take a snapshot of your data, all you got to do is follow these commands. -C is for consumer mode, and -ON at the end is pretty much start collecting from when you start, push all that data to a file. And I'm going to show you a video how that actually happens. Where I have my covenant, my health stack with Kafka, and I'm pointing everything to a file. So it's already putting everything to a file, as you can see at the bottom. Covenant, I just run a command, pretty much my credentials in registry command. And then at the end, I can just start validating that this will generate some data as well. And once that happens, I can see the password in there. And that's it. So that was a successful testing of my specific simulation. If I go to the Mordor documentation, you might be asking, who is Winnie 2019? That's the password of P. Gustavo, and P. Gustavo is my dog. Winnie is his girlfriend. So that's definitely how things work in here. And that's it. And then how do you get data back? Well, you can actually run a similar command with the -P for producer and -L to point to a file. And all this will be in the slides, so you can then do it later. And if you don't want to do that, if you say, you know what, man, give me all the data, I just want to analyze your data, I don't care about Kafka and all the stuff, run these 3 commands and you get every single data set in JSON file format in your system already. Simple as that. So at the end of the day, we went from spending a lot of time producing the data all the way to start analyzing the data and also start validating our analytics. That's as easy it is to do it with Mordor files. And you might be asking yourself, what do we do with this? So where do we get analytics? I have a lot of data. I'm so anxious. I don't know what to do. Well, Mordor and CAR can actually live together a little bit. Where CAR, you can have specific analytics, in this case, one provided by Tony Lambert from Red Canary. And in here, you can pretty much start interactively using Task Manager to get the memory contents of LSAS, for example, dump the memory contents of LSAS. And of course, you might ask yourself, how do we simulate this? Well, I simulated that for you already, where you can just have, for example, an RDP session. Kafka is starting before we execute the simulation. As you can see, all the data is being sent over there. And I do my administrator log on, just get into my box. And first want to check I'm in an RDP session. And then from there, I can start doing some, just opening the task manager. and I'm a very slow red teamer, sorry. And then, and I just go to right-click on LSASS, click on Create Dump File, and that's pretty much what it would be like pretty much what I want to detect. And at the end of the day, I can pretty much have that data at the bottom. As you can tell, everything that I'm doing is being recorded to a file. That's how simple it is just to collect data as you're doing a simulation to validate your recommended data sources as well. All right. So Car Analytics gives you also some analytics, things that you can start playing with. And they provided this for file creation. You might ask yourself, where do I run this? And well, there's a lot of places where you can run this, a lot of sims. I love to use Jupyter Notebooks to do this. And Jupyter Notebooks are just, think about Jupyter Notebooks as a file that you can access through a web interface where you can save input, output, visualizations, and notes to tell the story about your analytic. The way how it works, it actually has this kernel and client infrastructure where, once again, gets input, evaluates the input, and then it gets you the data back. And this is pretty much what it will look like as an architecture. The beautiful thing about Jupyter is that the kernel is not the Windows operating system kernel, nothing to do with that. It's pretty much the analytics piece, the engine that will execute things. And the beauty of this, you can have R, Python, PySpark, anything like that, which is amazing. So why don't we take this and put it into a Jupyter Notebook, which is going to be posted on the Hunter Playbook, because we use Jupyter Notebooks for all our analytics. And that's my dog, by the way, as well. I love my dogs on my stickers. We're going to use a library created by Jose as well, which allows me to do some statistical analysis. We're not going to use some of that, but just to let you know why we're using that in there. And the way how this works is we're going to grab this specific notebook. We have some tags, some descriptions about the specific analytic, which I like to actually document. I want to have a specific format to tell you the story about my analytic. Some data sources, and also some data sets from Mordor that I'm using to validate this analytic. And then I can just start now processing this data set. And you're going to have this notebook as well. So the idea here is just to grab this data and put it in a way that I can start running queries. The way how I do this, I actually make my data a SQL view, which would allow me to run SQL queries on the top. Every single step is documented, and I can start running the Car Analytics analytic, which is looking for process creation from Task Manager with the extension of DMP with the string LSASS, for example, right? And I can do that with Sysmon as well. And I have some other analytics that I can start running, for example, trying to do some process accessing a process where I can start doing, for example, in here, looking for the call trace, looking for specific DLLs where the APIs are used for dumping the memory contents of a process and all that. So pretty simple stuff. And at the end, you're going to have some extra 2 or 3 analytics in this notebook where I can actually look, for example, without Task Manager, show me any binary that is actually accessing LSASS and all that. And then I can join stuff, which I love about Jupyter Notebooks. You can just run joins and test your stuff. And I think that this one just gives me some more context about the process accessing a process. I'm joining that with a process creation because it gives me extra information such as logon ID. And I can take then that logon ID and then join it with another event. In this case, if we scroll down a little bit, it's going to be the event 4778, which tells me when a new session is actually started. And in there, I can actually see that somebody was running a RDP session mapped to a process creation, mapped to a process accessing LSASS with the specific DLLs and all of that, as you can see in the results in there. All right, so this is cool. We pretty much took a Car Analytic Mordor data set and we started playing with it. And something that we're doing is building a community around this. And this is the public Slack channel that you can access and get a free invite. It's going to be in the slides at the end. But something that I'm doing is actually giving you a Mordor data set in a Jupyter Notebook. And everybody gets a notebook now. So we're going to do this in 3 minutes. So the way how this works is a project called Binder. And the way how this works, it allows you to put together all these services that at the end of the day, what it does, it actually creates an open infrastructure for you to use with Jupyter Notebooks. you can take the 300 playbook repo, and then that's going to pretty much create your own Jupyter Notebook server in Binder, and you can use it. So we can pretty much do something like this. If you are streaming this right now, anybody, go to a 300 playbook, scroll down in the video starts. There you go. One. I think it started the video. I don't know where the video is. Just go. Is there a video there?
Just go over one more.
Oh yeah. So, anyways, so just go to this specific link in here, or the 300 playbook. I don't see any plate in there, so that's pretty interesting. But so when you go in there, it's going to be a Binder link. You click on it, and it's going to pretty much stand up a Jupyter server with Mordor data set, Jupyter Notebooks as well, mapped to specific analytics that are mapped to ATT&CK. Some of them are actually mapped to the core analytics to extend the analytics portion of that. And then you will be able to run all that together in pretty much a Jupyter Notebook in the cloud. So open infrastructure for open hunts that you can use for free. And the 300 playbook has that as a backend at the moment. So if you're live streaming, go there, click on it, and you might break Binder, because there's a lot of people in live stream right now. We're doing this for the community, and we love to empower the community. And of course, we cannot just do it by ourselves. We want to do it together. And all the things that we build, once again, are open source and things that we can share with the community and pretty much give it to people that do not have the resources or the flexibility just to build something. You can just click a link now and get all these data sources and stuff going on for free through your browser. And I think that that's pretty cool, because I can actually reach out to any part of the world to be able to run analytics and validate what we're building with real-time queries and also data sources that we build as well. These are all the references that we have. And before anything, thank you very much. Muchas gracias for everything. And thank you, ATT&CKcon, for the conference and for letting us be here. Thank you.